Welcome to Overview Part 2. We already talked about these first four columns. Now we're going to talk about the last four. These are statistical data, and that's all. All of these numbers should already be included in these first four columns someplace. If you think about it, in the party, we had how many were invited, we had how many didn't show up, we had how many are how many had to leave early, we had how many showed up that weren't invited. All of those account for the total number of people who are there at the end. Those are the first four columns. The last four columns are how many of these people were men versus women? How many of these people had blonde hair? How many had brown hair? How many had red hair? How many had blue eyes? How many had green eyes? How many had brown eyes? So that's the kind of information these last four are. The number of men and women doesn't change the final count, it just describes the final count. Whether they had brown hair or blue eyes doesn't change whether or not they were there, it just tells us a little bit more about the kinds of people who were there. And that's what we also need to know about the box tops. This doesn't tell us how many were there, it just tells us about the ones that are there. So in this column, we have the number of online. In this column, we have the number of bonus. In this column, we have the number that were not properly peeled or that weren't properly trimmed. And in the final column, we have whether or not the self-addressed stamped envelope was included. We need these for different reasons. Some of them, like the bonus box tops, that's something that box tops itself makes us give them. Part of the information that we have to fill out when we send them in is how many bonus box tops we have. So we need that information. Some of it we use for deciding how much postage to send. I have a grace period figured out because not all box tops can be trimmed. There's some that are heavy plastic and there's just no way to trim them. So we don't want to penalize people for that. But we also don't want to penalize the people who take the time to trim them and to peel them and have them pay the same amount as someone who tears them out and doesn't bother to peel them. We want the people who did the work to reap the benefit of that work. So we use this to figure out how much to charge people postage and to be fair about it. The online box tops, we need to know that because while box tops does give us the money for it, it doesn't tell us who it should go to. It just tells us it should go to our school. So we need to know who turned in online box tops so that we can credit them and give them the money that they deserve. The self-addressed stamped envelope, we need to know whether it's there to decide whether to know if we need to buy one for them and charge them accordingly. We just charge them a cost. We don't charge them any additional. When we get the check from box tops, the reason this is so important is because they just send us a check. They give us limited information and they don't tell us why we didn't get it. They said this is how many we counted and this is how much we're going to give you. My neighbor would say you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit, and that's what happens. So every now and then we'll get, well, more often than not in the past, we've either had an overage or an underage. The past 2 times we've hit it dead on, but that is the first time it's happened like that in a while. So when we have an over amount or an under amount, we need to be able to decide how to distribute that fairly. We need to know how to give an overage fairly, and we also need to know what to do if we don't get paid enough. Who do we need to deduct those from? What's the fairest way to handle that? These pieces of statistical information are vital in helping us be fair about how to deduct and who to deduct from.